If you ask me to summarize all the important things from the new volume, there are only 3 things that need to be noted, which are Ayanokoji confessed to Hiyori, Shinohara's expulsion, and Ichika almost gets sold to some rich ugly bastard. This might be hard to accept, but even though the newest volume is an island exam, there are only a few things that actually need to be remembered. The same thing could be said about the previous volume. It's entertaining as a standalone, but the impact that it brings to the series is just Ayanokoji winning as usual, and Ryuin gets depressed once again. Added with the first and second volumes, you probably realize that so far the third year arc doesn't really offer a promising conflict, or some grand plot where the characters revolve, but just a slice of life story with some extra special exams that rarely bring something new. If we compare it with the second year arc, the third year arc feels empty with reused plot and a not so interesting character. But the biggest problem is the fact that the third year arc doesn't have any clear direction that allows us to see how much the story has progressed. For example, in the second year arc, we know that there were White Room students who tried to expel Ayanokoji, and we got a clear confirmation that the uninhabited island exam will be the final stage against Tsukishiro. The early second year arc gives us a checkpoint so we can see where we are and how long before we reach the ending, so we can see the progress for real. However, the third year arc doesn't have that kind of grand plot. We know that Ayanokoji wanted Horikita or the others to defeat him, but that is a very abstract goal with a very long deadline, which is at the end of the year. As a result, we ended up getting more and more special exams just to see how Ayanokoji always has the upper hand. The special exam is honestly not a bad choice, but unfortunately the special exam in the third year no longer gives the same feeling as before. For example, since all special exams so far have only focused on the third year, we ended up seeing the same face again and again, with a similar conflict and not so different a result. Since Ayanokoji finally decided to go serious, everything seems to always be moving under his control, and that makes it so predictable. To make it worse, it feels like the editor of Classroom Elite starts to be more creative with their marketing. The newest volume synopsis has a few misleading sentences that don't really represent the volume, and the worst is definitely the second volume, where almost the entire synopsis feels like clickbait. It's not wrong to do that for more sales, but it just shows you how the volume content cannot live up with the synopsis anymore. So far every third year arc volume has its own special exam, and this is clearly lessening the value of the special exam itself. The first and second special exams don't have any expulsion, and the class point exchange is also low, so they don't really leave a lasting impact. There is an improvement in Volume 3 with the island exam, but once again, it was just Ayanokoji took the victory as usual, leaving the others with their invisible development. The choice to not include anything special in this island exam is honestly a big mistake in my opinion. They never had a joint special exam ever since the cultural festival, but somehow they chose to bring the first and second years without them even setting foot on the island. It's also disappointing that we didn't get the long-awaited Koenji vs Ayanokoji, or someone outside the school pulling the strings behind the scenes, so this entire island exam is just a series of wasted potential. The special exam is clearly not up to expectation, and sadly the quality of slice of life plot cannot cover it. This is probably just me, but Ichino says character development has stuck ever since the Promised Night, Ryuin still repeating the same tactic, and Horikita going nowhere with her friendship and leadership. It's honestly too much to expect a big change in just a few months, but since so far the third year arc only focused on them, we will eventually get tired of their story. Let's take Horikita as an example. She is clearly different from her first year version, but ever since the first volume of the third year up to the newest volume, Horikita just speaks with the same people over and over again. Other than Kei, there is no sign she ever tried widening her circle, or at least used Kushida to gather information outside the class. Contrary to how her development should be, Horikita remains as isolated as how the series began. The same thing could be said about Ryuin. He did start to listen more and involve his classmates, but so far in the island exam, we've never seen him actually asking for advice, or at least brainstorming to get a better idea, but he keeps sticking to his usual reckless and predictable strategy. These class leaders clearly have development, but so far in the third year their character has stopped growing, and who knows how long it will take before they actually become something that Ayanokoji's hoping for. On the contrary, Ayanokoji himself gets quite a decent upgrade. Even though the story of wanting to learn about love is clearly a reused plot, at least Ayanokoji finally found a genuine feeling that gives quite a bit of spice in the newest volume. However, how it came to Hiyori is clearly rushed, mostly because we only have one single lovey-dovey interaction before they confess. We got a lot of moments between Ayanokoji and Kei before they finally became a thing, so when Ayanokoji fell in love with Hiyori, you must have wondered where that feeling came from. Hiyori never sacrificed anything for Ayanokoji, nor did she ever spread her legs for him, so it will become an eternal question: why did Ayanokoji fall in love with Hiyori instead of Kei? It's good that Ayanokoji finally fall in love, but you cannot deny that the emotional impact is not as good as Kei. Speaking of emotional impact, so far the third year arc has some good emotional moments such as Kei and Horikita bonding, or Ibuki kicking Horikita, but all of that happened in the first volume, leaving the other volumes dry of content. Another reason why the third year arc has a slow start is most likely because we have no new characters that could steal readers' attention. Ever since the first volume, Shiraishi is the only new character who has actually been given enough spotlight, but needless to say, her character failed to leave a lasting impact. She doesn't really have an incredible design, nor did she bring a knife and try to stab Ayanokoji, so she ended up becoming a character that just appears from time to time. The second volume gives a lot of improvement for Shiraishi, with her being someone on a mission and her mysterious connection with Tsubasa. The second volume is actually interesting for mystery lovers, but sadly we only got a tease of the lore, and the next volume decides to forget all of it. There is no hint if Ayanokoji knew about Tsubasa and Shiraishi, or what happened between Horikita and Ishigami, so it feels like we were given a candy just so we could starve for another year. There is no new character means there is only a limited way to develop the plot, which means we eventually see the same character again and again. However, these old characters don't bring anything new. We see Shiraishi falling in love, we see Kaneda falling in love, and eventually it was Ayanokoji who also falling in love. Almost every internal conflict that we have is all about love, and that love eventually becomes the reason why Ayanokoji leave his chance to win the exam. So at some point you just wonder if the story actually had it in the right way or not. It's not that love is a boring topic, but we just have enough of it ever since the second year arc. Fortunately, the mystery of Tsubasa carried the third year arc, so they did not become a forgettable volume. The first volume gives us a glimpse that Tsubasa is working with Tsukishiro, and later the second volume expands the mystery to the level where it's enough for us to figure out what exactly happened outside the school. It's a shame Tsubasa didn't make any appearance in the third volume, but in the newest volume, she was shown trying to recruit Ichika to join her side. This plot is clearly the most interesting story in the third year arc, but sadly we only got a bit of it in every volume, leaving the rest of the volume empty and boring. This mystery of Tsubasa is also linked to the hype from volume 12.5, where the big guys showed up and created a little bet with their sons as the pawn. Since Tsubasa got her information from Tsukishiro, she must have known about this bet, so what she did will eventually lead us to this great battle. Speaking of volume 12.5, it's also another reason why this third year arc feels so weak and slow. Volume 12.5 has a ton of hype that made us anticipate the third year to such a high degree, starting from Ayanokoji's transfer, the promised night, and of course the long-awaited fight between Ayanokoji and Koenji. However, none of that hype actually gets a good payoff. Ayanokoji's transfer reaction feels bland, Ichinose keeps walking backward, and Koenji is just busy with his dates like usual. I know they probably saved the big conflict for the future, but for consecutive volumes without any hint about their clash is simply a poor writing choice. Needless to say, we are still on the early stage of the third year arc, and there is always a chance the plot will become thicker in the next volume. However, I really hope Kinugasa stops making his characters fall in love, or at least stops making the new girl fall in love with Ayanokoji. Let Ayanokoji focus on Hiyori, and let the class leaders actually have a chance to win. Even if the beginning is not very good, at least the foundation is still solid, so there should be a lot to expect from the future.